Mr Speaker, my question is to the Minister of Finance. What reassurance did he give to delegates at the Grey Power Conference about his explanation of how government policies were affecting vulnerable older people?
The Honourable Bill English.
Mr Speaker, I pointed out a number of the government's initiatives which have helped them. In health, the government has delivered an extra 12,000 elective operations this year, a record annual increase. In law and order, we've provided for an extra 600 frontline police officers and given police new tools such as tasers to go after criminals. And I've pointed out that since 1st of October 2008, the New Zealand rate of national super for a married couple has increased by $100 a fortnight in the hand.
The Honourable Leader of the Opposition.
Supplementary question, Mr Speaker. Did his explanation to the delegates about cleaning his own bathroom impress them when they knew ministers get cleaning costs paid for them, and this minister actually asked for more, while people like Desmond Peat, a war veteran who has an amputated leg and is on the waiting list for a heart bypass, has just had his home help cut by 1.5 hours?
Mr Speaker.
Insofar as the Minister, if I heard the question rightly, it asked about the reaction of a meeting. Now, the Minister is not responsible for how an organisation may react, but order, I'm dealing with an issue. And if the question asked specifically about the speech, that would be fine, but the question asked about the reaction of an audience. Now, the Minister is not responsible for that. What I'd like the Minister to do is please rephrase his question to make it clearly within standing orders.
Yeah. What I asked, Mr Speaker, was did he impress the delegates? And he has an opinion on that because he gave the speech.
Okay, I accept. If the member repeats his question, I accept the point he's making absolutely.
Thank you, Mr Speaker. I will repeat it. Did his explanation about cleaning his own bathroom impress delegates when they know that ministers get cleaning costs paid for them, and this particular minister asked for more, while people like Desmond Peat, a war veteran with an amputated leg and waiting for heart surgery, has just had 1.5 hours of his home help cut, leaving him with nothing?
The Honourable Bill English.
Well, Mr Speaker, actually the Prime Minister's removed the cleaning costs. That was a privilege available to Labor ministers that national ministers don't get. But, Mr Speaker, there was a serious... Well, I thought the member had a serious intent behind his question, which was home care for vulnerable older people, but I can see he doesn't.
Supplementary question, Mr Speaker. What does the Minister, in light of what he was told by the delegates at the conference, say then about this man, about whom I received a letter today? Henry is 84, has heart problems and bowel cancer and difficulty walking. His 1 3/4 hours home care has just been cut. That's miserable. Why is the Minister of Finance allowing that to happen?
The Honourable Bill English.
Well, Mr Speaker, at the meeting with Grey Power, I outlined to Grey Power that we felt the system ought to deal with cases individually to ensure that vulnerable older people were not left without care. And my colleague, the Minister of Health, has pointed out that you have the opportunity to bring those cases forward, and they will be dealt with.
Point of order, Mr Speaker.
Point of order, the Honourable Leader of the Opposition.
Mr Speaker, I seek to table the letter about Henry, which identifies his son's name and his circumstances, and as Henry lives in or near the member's electorate, perhaps he will act on it.
The last bit was not necessary to seeking leave to table a document. Leave has sought to table that document. Is there any objection? There is no objection. Joe Goodhue.
Supplementary question. Thank you, Mr Speaker. To the Minister, what upfront compensation was provided to superannuants and vulnerable older New Zealanders when GST was last increased in 1989?
The Honourable Bill English.
Well, Mr Speaker...
Order. Order. The Honourable Bill English.
When GST was increased 21 years ago, by the Labor cabinet, including the current leader and deputy leader of the Labor Party, Phil Goff and Annette King, there was not 1 cent of compensation for superannuitants. And I'm not surprised, because Phil Goff has told the media and the public he's against an increase in GST, but he won't roll it back.
The Honourable Leader of the Opposition.
Supplementary question, Mr Speaker. Did the grey power delegates think that it was fair that frail and vulnerable elderly people on low incomes had been stripped of their home care assistance?
Order. I'd ask the member please to, he asked the question, did the grey power delegates do something? The minister's got no responsibility for that.
Mr Speaker, did the delegates tell the minister that they thought it was fair that frail and elderly people were being stripped of their home care assistance, while he, as Minister of Finance, has foreshadowed tax cuts that will give him and his cabinet colleagues about $240 extra a week?
The Honourable Bill English.
Mr Speaker, they raised the issue of home care because we have an open and constructive relationship with grey power, and where they have raised legitimate cases that should be looked at, the Minister of Health has undertaken to look at them.
Chair Goodhue.
Thank you, Mr Speaker. How would superannuants be compensated for any increase in GST as part of any tax package in the budget next month?
The Honourable Bill English.
Well, Mr Speaker, for the benefit of the Leader of the Opposition, who's made a number of public statements which indicate he doesn't understand how national super works, let me explain. If GST is increased, there would be a once-only increase of inflation of just over 2%. After-tax superannuation rates would be increased on the day of any GST increase by that amount. To meet other and ongoing price increases, the usual annual inflation adjustment would be made to superannuation rates so their spending power is preserved. Finally, any personal income tax cuts would also increase the amount of super people receive in the hand, because it would be less tax on super and because it raises the floor of 66% of the after-tax average wage.
The Honourable Leader of the Opposition.
Speaker, did the delegates tell Mr English that they thought the government had its priorities right in cutting home help, in cutting out funding for the ACC Falls Prevention Program and cutting orthopaedic surgery for elderly people, while this government was giving a privileged and wealthy elite the biggest cuts in recent times to their income tax in the forthcoming budget?
The Honourable Bill English.
Mr Speaker, in fact, no, they didn't say that. Because they understand what the Leader of the Opposition doesn't, that in the depths of a significant recession, the government has protected the elderly, as indicated by the fact that national superannuation for a married couple is now $100 per fortnight higher than it was in October 2008. And they also understand that we need to lift growth in this economy if we're going to give them a decent standard of living.
The Honourable Leader of the Opposition.
Supplementary question, Mr Speaker. At the end of his discussion with the grey power delegates, did he have any better understanding of why they think that this government is looking after themselves and their wealthy mates while slashing help to elderly people who have paid taxes all of their lives?
The Honourable Bill English.
Well, Mr Speaker, coming from the leader of a party that squandered 9 years of a growing economy...
Point of order, the Honourable...
Point of order, Mr Speaker.
Order. Order. A point of order has been called. Order. 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 Point of order has been called, and that is unacceptable. The Honourable Leader of the Opposition.
Mr Speaker, I think you know that it's not appropriate to start an answer to a question in that way.
Order. I'll hear the Honourable Cherry Brown.
Mr Speaker, you've previously ruled that if members ask questions that make outrageous assertions, such as those made by the Honourable Phil Goff in that question, they should expect a hard flick back.
This will be the last. Order. Now, look, people are offending all over the place, but I do remind them that a point of order is being heard and it should be heard in silence.